What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Scotty Talks NBA pod mixed with the To the Galaxy pod. Slim, we're gonna have to find like a legitimate name for this podcast. We're gonna have to like intertwine both the names of our shows and put them
Yeah.
together somehow whenever we decide to collab and do some content. But be sure to give my man a follow, my co-host here, Slim, at RTR30111 on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. Make sure to give him a follow. That's where you're going to find all of his content, all of his links to the Galaxy pod, which he does on his own from time to time. And of course, I'm Scotty. You can find me right here on the Scotty Talks NBA channel. This is also streaming on the To the Galaxy pod YouTube channel, so be sure to give a subscription there as well if you're not already subscribing. But Slim, a lot of me talking there. Welcome to the show, man. Welcome back. It's been a minute since we broke down the NBA, but I'm happy to be back here with you, my man. How you been?
It's been good, bro. Just been chilling. A lot of things have transpired in the NBA that we have to cover, but in due time we'll get to that. But yeah, man, just excited to be here again. And to those who watch it from my platform, make sure to hit my guy Scotty with a subscription. Follow
Appreciate
him
that.
on X, formerly known as Twitter. I'll make sure to leave all his links in the description of the video. But yeah, man, just excited to be here, chop it up with you, bro. And yeah, it's been a while.
Likewise, man. We're getting ready for the postseason, so we're gonna kick it up a notch with the content that we're gonna be getting out here to finish the season strong. Obviously, it's the most exciting part of the season when you talk about approaching postseason play. So we'll definitely be getting on here a little bit more consistently going forward together. But yeah, I appreciate the shout out on your end as well. Happy to have all of you guys back here tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button on whichever channel that you're watching this show from, whether that's Slim's channel, To the Galaxy Pod, or my channel, the DSM Media Scotty Talks NBA channel. But got a lot to get into today, so let's get to it, my man, because we got a lot of catching up to do, nonetheless.
For sure.
Where I want to start, and I know we discussed this beforehand, so I know you're down to start here as well. Just taking a look at the playoff picture, we're going to hone in and focus on two specific teams, one from each conference that we have each pinpointed as teams to kind of look out for. Like what can we predict for these teams as they're kind of wild cards as we approach the postseason? With that conversation, we'll get into the entire playoff standings right now and take a look at a few different teams here. We'll get through that. We'll talk about both of our teams more specifically. Yours being the Warriors, who are currently, I believe, in the 10th seed in the West right now. So right in the bottom of the play-in tournament there. And then the Sixers, who have dropped down to the 8th seed on my side here, who are also in the play-in tournament currently. And then we'll just finish out with our updated top 10 power rankings to kind of highlight the finish of this season here. But let's start over in the Eastern Conference, man. I wanted to take a look over here, and I'll give you my solidified contenders in the Eastern Conference. And it's gonna get us to the point where we're gonna talk about this team in Orlando, and that's where we really want to get to with this Eastern Conference combo. Now, for my money, Slim, in the Eastern Conference, my locks, like my legitimate contenders in the Eastern Conference, would be the Boston Celtics, the Milwaukee Bucks, and the New York Knicks. Those are my three like legitimate teams that I think could somehow find a way out of the Eastern Conference without any caveats. Like I think the Cavs, they can do it. There's just some caveats there. Can D-Mitch stay healthy? Can Garland figure out how to kind of work together with D-Mitch to get the most out of that relationship? Can Jared Allen and Evan Mobley figure things out in the postseason? You go down the list, Orlando, Indiana, right? They all have like their question marks. Even Philadelphia, of course. Joel Embiid not healthy currently. Miami, it's Miami, right? Like we know Miami is going to show up in the postseason. They're going to be tough, but why are they the 7 seed still? Why can't they make their way up the rankings as things get a little bit tighter right now? So I'll throw it to you. Who are your locks as contenders in the Eastern Conference? Like, would you agree with me, Boston, Milwaukee, New York, or would you add another team? Would you take a team away from that group? What are your thoughts there?
Well, to be honest, I agree with all the teams that you named. The Cavs. I mean, not the Cavs, the Celtics, the Bucks, and the Knicks. I mean, all three of those guys could somehow find a way to make it out the Eastern Conference for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you brought up the Cavs because it's so crazy. I was watching Draymond Green pod the other day, and he brought something up that I totally forgot. And
Yeah,
Jared Allen in that series against the Knicks last playoffs, he mentioned that the Bryce was too light, and
yeah,
that's something that a lot of guys in this league, the Bryce do be too light for them. Like they can't perform, when called upon when it matters the most. And yeah, for Jared Allen to come out and admit that says a lot. But yeah,
yeah,
I think that the Celtics, the Bucks, and the Knicks for sure are the loss. Like, but as you mentioned with the Cavs, like it's a lot of what else. If Mitchell can
yeah,
stay healthy,
yeah.
can Allen and Mobley can all guys work together. So yeah, I totally agree with you. The Celtics, Bucks, Knicks for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I
hold on, I
think.
will say this though, like
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
Heat. I don't know, bro. It's kind of tough, like to count them out. Although you do have a
I
point, like
feel
why
you.
are they the 7th seed?
I do.
Because they was a playing team last season and they did make the finals, so you can never take that away from them for sure.
I do. I honestly do feel you, and I would even argue that even with the Heat at the 7 seed right now, you could argue that they are that fourth team right there. Like the Cavs, they've been great all season. Their record's great. They're holding the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference. They've been great in the regular season. It is just what you said. It's Jared Allen, but then that extends down to the rest of the team. We've just never seen anyone really on that roster outside of Donovan Mitchell perform really well in the postseason. He's the only guy that we've seen actually go out there and look like a star in the postseason. So,
Right.
for my money, even I would put Miami over Cleveland. I would definitely put Miami over Indiana and Orlando, who are currently ahead of them in the standings as well. But no,
Right.
I think that's a great point. Miami should be maybe they're like in that group, but with an asterisk, right? Like they're at the 7 seed. They never have a great regular season, but you know what Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and those guys can bring as far as toughness and just being a hard out once the postseason comes. So I do agree with you there. I want to lock in on the Orlando Magic. You brought this to me before the show, so I want to give you the credit for bringing the Orlando Magic up because it had been a while since we chatted on NBA hoops here. But when you look at the Orlando Magic, they've been able to take advantage of the Philadelphia 76ers losing Embiid, been able to jump them. They've been able to take advantage of the Miami Heat and the regular season woes that they seem to face every single season. And they've been able to take advantage of the Indiana Pacers who just don't play defense, right?
Right.
So they ended up here at the 5th seed. They're right behind New York. I think they're only like a half game back of New York currently for the 4th seed. The Orlando Magic, is this team real for you? Like, is this a team that Eastern Conference teams should be scared of? Like, when you look at that first round matchup right now of what it would be, the New York Knicks versus the Orlando Magic, do you feel that like the Magic would have a shot against a team like the Knicks?
Uh, I would have to say yes, and it has a lot to do with Julius Randle. Like when it comes down to
That's a great
postseason,
point.
I don't know if I can just trust him. To me, Jalen Brunson, he's shown that he can get the job done for sure. But with Randle, I can't necessarily say that. But yeah, I feel like the Magic can definitely. I wouldn't be surprised if they were to win a playoff series. I mean, this team has been consistent all season. Paulo been chairman leading the way. He's an all star for a reason. More
Yeah,
than likely, he should make an All NBA team. And yeah, like I got to give the head coach Jamal Mosley. I think that's right. A lot of
yeah,
credit. He's been, coaching these guys pretty well. Jalen Suggs, he's
yeah.
been assisting all season. He found his role.
He
I
does
can't.
everything. Yeah, I like
Yeah, he
Jalen
does.
Suggs.
He's like the glue guy. He does it all, really.
Yeah, he
And
reminds
what's
me
the
of
center
Josh
name?
Hart. He reminds me of Josh Hart. No lie.
Yeah, he does it all. And what's the center name? It starts with a G. Go. It's something like that.
I know
He,
who you're
he-
talking about. The tough guy, right?
yeah, him.
The guy that's always about to fight somebody. I know exactly who you're talking about. Let me
Yeah, and
find.
he's found the role on the team. So they got like a lot of guys who know their role on this team. Franz Wagner doing
Yeah,
his thing. But yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised they were to find a way. I mean, Paulo, he's been leading these guys. He's a hooper. Your
he's a
Duke
true
guy.
star.
So yeah, your guy from Duke. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you let me ask you this about Paulo? Do you consider him like I know there's some people that still have like a ruling out on Paulo as like a legitimate number one. Do you look at him as like a legitimate number one on a championship roster? Like can he grow into that in your eyes?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like he's only going to get better,
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure he could definitely be a number one option in this league. I mean,
He can do a
I feel
little
like
bit
there
of
shouldn't be no
everything.
pressure for him to win like a championship this early on. Like obviously, as the years go by, he's going
Yeah,
to continue to get better. Guys going to want to come to Orlando and play with him. So
yeah.
yeah, he could definitely be the number one option for sure.
I think that's the biggest thing for Orlando this offseason. It's like you said, there's really no expectations for them coming into this season. I mean, Franz is young. This whole team is young in reality, outside of what's his name? Oh my goodness.
Gary
The dude, Joe
Harris,
Ingles.
Markel Fultz,
Markel Fultz, and Joe Ingles. Outside of
Gary
those guys,
Harris, all those
this team is
guys.
is pretty young. So you're right. There is no pressure on them to win this postseason. If they lose to the Knicks in the first round, that's not a bad or a disappointing season for the Orlando Magic, in my
Not at
opinion.
all.
Yeah, so I do agree with you. I think the big thing for them this offseason is just adding shooting. They need to add shooters around Paulo, around Franz, just to give them a little bit more floor spacing. And I think just keeping guys like Jalen Suggs, even guys like Cole Anthony coming off the bench, I think that's great to have that
Right.
scoring option off the bench as well. Out of the Eastern Conference playoff teams, who would you take the Orlando Magic over in a series right now? Like out of the teams that are left in the Eastern Conference playoffs. So obviously, I would imagine you're not taking them over Boston, Milwaukee, Cleveland. Cleveland's a good place to start. Do you think the Magic could beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in a 7-game series?
Man, it's so tough.
It's tough. It's tough. I'll
It's
tell
tough
you,
for sure.
I would take the Cavs in that series, but I do think it's possible.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Like, it's definitely possible for sure. But it's just hard for me, to just downplay Donovan Mitchell, in the
Lack of
postseason.
experience.
Yeah, because he's Donovan Mitchell, one of those guys. He's proven when postseason come around, his stats goes up. He
He's
just be
going to
on
turn
another
up.
level. Yeah, he's going to turn it up a notch like Jimmy Butler as
Yeah.
well. But yeah, I think I had to get the Cavs a notch now. But although I wouldn't be surprised if the Magic were to find a way to push it to a 7-game series or somehow
Yeah.
find a way to win. So yeah,
It's
for
interesting.
sure.
So the Knicks would be the next one here. I feel like I would take the Knicks over the Magic pretty easily here. It's not that I think that the Magic couldn't beat them. I think they could, right? Like if Jalen Brunson's having an off series or something, if OG's still banged up. You mentioned Julius Randle, right? If he's having an off series, which we've seen him struggle mightily in the postseason. What about the New York Knicks? Would you put them on that list, or would you put the New York Knicks more in that? Like we said at the beginning of the show, just those legitimate contenders in the East.
I think the Knicks would get the best of the Magic, although they are missing Mitchell Robinson. Is he out for the season that you know of?
I don't know. I think that's on the fence. I think there's a chance he could come back at some point in the postseason, but there's nothing guaranteed.
Okay, so if maybe you get him back and OG's right, and Julius Randle is providing you around 18 points per game, something like that on nice, shooting
Toughness.
splits, then yeah, I can see the Knicks getting it done because Brunson, I feel like he's going to do his thing. He's going to get 24 points per game easily.
Yeah.
So I can see the Knicks holding it down. I like the depth they got: Dante, Josh Hart, Miles McBride, Bogdanovich coming off the bench.
Yeah.
And so they got Precious Achua as well. So I can see those guys getting the job done.
Yeah, they have guys that are kind of untapped within their rotation, if that makes sense. Like Bogdanovich, you mentioned, he hasn't really found his footing with that team yet.
Right.
Doesn't mean that he won't, right? And if he does, that's a deadly weapon coming off the bench for the New York Knicks. I do agree with you there. Let's go to the rest of the East, though. When you go to the Pacers, do you favor the Orlando Magic against the Pacers, the Miami Heat, the Sixers, just to bottom out the Eastern Conference?
I definitely see them getting the job done against the Pacers for sure.
Yeah, Pacers is that one team. Sixers, I would add in without Embiid. I do think the Magic could beat the Sixers without Embiid.
Without Embiid for sure. But if Joel
could.
If Joel plays, then he would give the Magic problems for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But
that's the crazy caveat with the Sixers. It's they're the 8th seed. They look beatable by just about any team right now. But when you add Joel Embiid, what does he look like coming off the injury, coming back? And we already know the caliber player that he is when he is healthy, right? And what that does for that team. So they are kind of that caveat team at the bottom of the East there. But yeah, I think I would take the only team that I would take the Magic over in the Eastern Conference, to be clear here, is the Indiana Pacers. Like, that is in the playoff picture right now. Like,
Right.
the Hawks, I just don't think the Hawks and Bulls are going to make the postseason. I think they'll get eliminated in the play-in tournament.
I can
So I
understand.
think I would take Miami over Orlando, obviously. And then the Sixers, they're that caveat team. If they don't have Embiid, I'm taking Orlando. If they do have Embiid, I'm taking Philly. But I think Indiana is the only team I
Yeah,
wouldn't take over Orlando right now.
that would actually be an interesting series though, because wouldn't it be Paulo and Tyrese Halliburton first playoff series?
Yeah. I'm not saying Indiana doesn't have a chance. To your point,
Yeah, 'cause
I
they do
think
have Pascal Siakam now. Miles Turner. It would
that
definitely
is
be
true.
interesting.
I forget about the Pascal trade, man.
Interesting.
That's an
Yeah,
interesting
that would be
series.
interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if they go to 7 games. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because you're right. You have the Paolo and the Pascal Siakam matchup, right?
right,
And then you can go to like Franz versus like caliber players. They probably
right.
won't guard each other, but it would be interesting to see what would Orlando do with Tyrese Halliburton though. Like, who's guarding him? I guess like Jalen Suggs or
Yeah,
something.
I would say so. Oh, I'm forgetting that the Magic have Isaac as well. Like I don't know if he's been
Jonathan Isaac, yeah, he's a
playing a
long.
lot, but yeah, him and
Yeah,
Markel Fultz. So yeah, that would be
that's the
interesting.
thing with this Magic team is like you don't know what these guys are going to look like in the postseason until they get there, right? Like, for all we know, Paolo could shrink in the postseason. He could also become one of the most prolific stars in the postseason, one of the most clutch players in the postseason. Jalen Suggs could like turn it up a notch in the postseason and become that next level glue guy, like you said earlier. Like, that's the thing with these unknown teams in the Eastern Conference here is like, we don't know what they can do when they reach their ceiling and if they reach their ceiling in the postseason. So it is kind of interesting from that standpoint, man. Can you hear me? You flashed out of here for a second.
What's going on? Yeah, it's like I can hear you. I see you talking, but it's like, can you hear me though?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, but I can't hear you though. That's the thing.
That's weird.
Yeah, that's wild.
Let me see here.
I'm gonna drop down and come back.
Yeah, that's fine. All right. So I had some technical difficulties there.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, StreamYard has this great feature where we can pause the recording and bring it back. So we're good. We got Slim back, made sure he could hear me here. So we're going to move to the Western Conference. We locked in on the Eastern Conference. I think we're on the same page, quite honestly, when it comes to the contenders in the East, kind of where things sit right now. But let's look at the Western Conference because I think this one is a little more interesting. So to start the Eastern Conference, I gave you like my locks for contenders in the East, right? And there was 3 teams for me, right? Boston, Milwaukee, and New York. In the Western Conference, I feel like it could go a little bit further, but I have kind of dwindled it down to 4 teams that I think are kind of locks as contenders for me in the Western Conference. If you have more than this, definitely let me know because I think it is an arguable point. But I went with OKC as a contender. I think you can argue that they're not just because of their youth. I think you can argue that. I just think they are good enough right now that they just have so much talent. It doesn't matter their youth. They can go out here and just try things. The Denver Nuggets, obviously, I would even put them ahead of the Oklahoma City Thunder, of course.
Yeah.
The Minnesota Timberwolves, even without Cat, I think they can still contend in the Western Conference. Just
That's
with Ant Edwards, that man is a dog. Might be my favorite player in the league, like outside of the Sixers, right? Like this dude is a dog. But the other team that I would throw in there is the LA Clippers. I know they've struggled lately. They're highly dependent on health, right? Like, can Kawhi, can PG, can James Harden stay healthy? If they can, I do think the Clippers are legitimate contenders in the West. But I would stop right there. But if you have some other teams that you want to throw in there, I understand that. If you have a team or two you would take out, I understand that as well. What are your thoughts there?
To be honest, I agree with all those names that you listed there. I mean, the Thunder, obviously, the key thing with them, do they have enough experience?
Yeah.
Which, they added Gordon Hayward at the trade deadline. They brought in Bismack Biyombo. Those are vets on the team
Yeah.
that you can, like, put around Chet, SGA, all those guys. But I mean, you still got to give them their props. They're the number one seed in the West, correct?
Yeah, right now they
So
are
yeah,
half
you
game
just
up on
can't
the
you can't
Nuggets.
really discredit that. It's an 82 game season. Although obviously when you get in the playoffs, things are different.
Yeah,
But yeah, I consider those guys a contender for sure. They earned that. And with the Timberwolves, even without Cat, I see your point. I mean, you got a guy like Nas Reed coming off the bench. You can just
yeah,
throw him at that fourth spot. You got Kyle Anderson. You got depth.
yeah,
Mike Conley. I think they added Monte Morris at the trade deadline.
yeah.
So,
Another
yeah, you can
guard.
throw those guys out there too. You have to respect them. You can't really overlook them.
Yeah,
Obviously, the Denver Nuggets, I mean,
yeah,
that team, you talk about potential to start of a dynasty. I mean, those guys complement each
yeah.
other also well. Like, they got position of size. They're a big team. The way they
Let me
play.
ask you real quick while you're on there. Right now, off the top of your head, 7-game series, Nuggets or Celtics? Who are you taking?
I had to go with the Nuggets on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do agree. Just that experience, seeing what
Yeah.
they did last postseason to the Heat. Yeah, I do
Yeah.
agree. That was
Although I
just real
will say,
quick
I
though.
think the Celtics may have the better depth, but I just think the Nuggets will get the best of them. You
Yeah,
know.
there's just something that clicks about this Nuggets team, right? Where
Yeah,
you
they
could
all
just
feed off
see
each other so well.
they're coasting through the regular season, right? Like it doesn't even look like they've turned it on. They've turned it up a little bit since the All-Star break, but
Yeah.
even then it feels like we have not seen their peak yet. They're just kind of coasting, grabbing wins on the way.
Yeah, so I think the Nuggets and the Celtics are both tied for the best record since the All-Star break, like at
That would make
14 and 2
sense.
or something like that. So yeah, with the Nuggets, you can never count those guys out. Like it was up going into the season, it was so many talking heads, like it was a one and done thing. I was never fooled by that. I mean, Jokic, I mean, he
Yeah.
treats the NBA like it's a 9 to 5 job. But I mean, you can't overlook his greatness. I mean,
I
that
respect
guy,
it.
that guy is different, bro. Like
Yeah,
you haven't really seen too many guys do what he do. But yeah, besides the
I agree.
Nuggets, I mean, the Los Angeles Clippers, like the health, like can those guys stay healthy? That's the key thing. Can Kawhi
Yeah. So maybe
PG?
they're not a lock.
Harden?
Maybe that's what it is, right? Like they're highly dependent on if they're going to be healthy. Maybe that makes them not a lock. To your point.
Right. Yeah, but I will say this though, like when the game slow down in the playoffs, how court said, like Kawhi, that's a bad guy, to be in the matchup with for sure. Like I
Yeah.
think they're like the fourth seed at the moment, so maybe
Yeah.
they get matched up against the Pelicans and
That's
get
a
the best
good
of those
point
guys.
because Kawhi can win you a series against anyone.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
to be
He's
clear,
he's
like if
proven it.
he's hot,
Yeah, he's proven that. But I gotta get Paul George his props too. Like we go back
yeah,
to 2021 when they made their run to the Western Conference Finals. Kawhi was pretty much out the whole run, and Paul George, he led the way for sure.
yeah,
So yeah, it's
yeah,
just really like it's just helpful for those guys. Like nobody never knocking them. Like they can win all the games in a row in the regular season, but those guys not healthy, able to get the job done. And
yeah.
hey, but
That's what it's
yeah,
going to come down to.
So I agree with all the teams that you mentioned. If it's one team, I would throw out there maybe the Mavs. It depends. I like what
Yeah,
I've been seeing from those guys as of late. I
yeah,
mean, they got a lot of depth, and I love what they did at the trade deadline, getting in
yeah.
PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford. So yeah,
Those were two guys that they like really needed, like a
yes,
floor spacing big, and then a rebounding defensive minded
live
big
threat,
man in Gafford.
right?
Yeah.
Live threat, and Kyrie
What
been
about
dunking the
Phoenix
hell
and
out the ball as of late, bro.
what about Phoenix and New Orleans? How do you feel about those two teams specifically?
I would say this like it's sort of the same with the Clippers. Can they kind of stay healthy, like in and out of
For New
lineups?
Orleans, especially, I feel. Well,
Yeah,
I guess Phoenix the same thing. Yeah, with
I
Beal
gotta give the
and
Pelicans their
Book.
props too, though, because they've been like to me under the radar. Like they've been playing good basketball. That's like nobody's been really talking about them because I checked the standings before me. I text you what I was like. I didn't even
Hmm.
know that they was in the fifth seed. For some
Yeah,
reason, I thought they was like in the 7 or 6, but I'm like, whoa, they in the
yeah,
fifth seed, and it's like nobody's been talking about them now. Looked at a few of their games, and they just been quietly winning. Just
yeah,
one game at a time, figuring it out. I like the Pelican roster. They got a lot of depth over there as well. Zion, from my understanding, he lost around 25 pounds or whatnot, and he's been, you know, playing pretty good. I think they run the offense through him a lot, allow him to make
yeah.
plays and whatnot. So, yeah, but I guess you can consider the Pelicans and the Suns maybe contenders. It all depends. There's a lot of what ifs. So,
The West is so deep, man. Because like when you look at the West, and obviously we're going to talk about your Warriors later, but like down at the bottom, even right, you have the Houston Rockets creeping up behind the Warriors too, right?
yeah.
They've won
Yeah,
8 in a row. They're like 9-1 in their last 10. The Houston Rockets, like Jalen Green has been on fire right now.
he's been rolling.
Um, and then of course you got the Lakers. We know LeBron and AD, the defensive prowess of that team, that unit. The Dallas Mavericks, you mentioned, it's Luka and Kyrie plus the team that they've been able to build around them. The Sacramento Kings, right? This hot team that came out of nowhere last year. De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, arguably an MVP. Like, I know he's not like a leading MVP candidate, probably not top 3, but top
Man,
5, top 7
this is so
MVP
wild,
candidate.
bro. Like
I mean,
I forgot about the Kings. I'm not gonna lie. This is
yeah.
crazy. The West is too deep. I can't take this, bro. I forgot about the Sacramento Kings. Like this
And
is
they can
wild right now.
score. They can take the roof off the building with their scoring. Like, they can score the
Absolutely,
rock.
bro. Like the way they run that offensive bonus, he's averaging like what 8, 7 assists a game. So yeah, like, and it's crazy to think that Fox or Sabonis wasn't an All Star this season, but the West is just so
Yeah,
deep, man. You know.
yeah. So to that point, like, that's what makes the West so tough because, like, if you look outside of Minnesota, so maybe what I would say, I would take the LA Clippers out of that top 4. It would just be a top 3 for me as far as like legitimate contenders. I'd probably just go with OKC, Denver, and Minnesota, and then put the rest of these guys in like their own bucket. But with that being said, I like when I separate the top 3 in the Western Conference versus like separating the Eastern Conference, for example, 4 through 10 in the West is better than 4 through 10 in the East, if that makes sense. Like,
Absolutely.
I would consider 4
Absolutely.
through 10 more legitimate contenders than anybody 4 through 10 in the East. Now, maybe the
Absolutely.
caveats would be like the Sacramento Kings versus like the New York Knicks. Maybe I would take the Knicks over the Kings or something like that. But generally speaking, even 3 down, like I'm probably taking the Lakers over the Cleveland Cavaliers, like when it comes to a 7-game series.
Right.
How do you feel about like how do you feel about
No,
that?
I agree with you.
Like experience matters when it gets to the postseason. I feel
Yeah, it
like the
does.
Western Conference has a ton more experience than the East.
It does. Like if you match up both conferences play in games, you will have in the East the Heat versus the Sixers at the moment, the
Yeah.
Bulls versus the Hawks, and then on the flip side, they got the Kings versus the Mavs, and then the Warriors versus the Lakers. Like, I mean, that kind of says it all right there.
I know like people will probably call me crazy, but the Warriors, if they get hot, if they get on the same page as a team, they get rolling going into the postseason. You can argue that the Warriors could win the championship with the experience that they pose. Like,
Yeah,
you
the
have a
experience
championship
means a
head
lot.
coach, you have Steph Curry, you have Draymond Green, so on and so forth. If the other guys can figure shit out and get clicking, you can argue that the Warriors could, if they
Yeah,
can obtain that 8 seed, win the championship. Whereas you get over to the East, man, 5 and down, I'm not going to try to argue with you that these teams are going to win the
mhm,
championship. Like,
right.
I get it. The Warriors have not been super impressive. Are they going to win the championship this year? I don't think so, but I would take them over some of the teams in the bottom half of the Eastern Conference standings
Yeah,
right
I
now, and
want
I
to say
think that's kind
yeah,
of crazy.
yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Like from that down, like from the fifth seed on
Yeah,
down, maybe the Heat, right? You know, because you
the
just
Heat. Yeah,
it's so
that's a
hard
good
to
point.
count those guys out.
We
Like
always forget the Heat. It's hard to
it's
remember them
hard to
at the
just count
7th
those
seed, but
guys out.
yes,
Like, I mean, they added depth at the trade deadline. They got Terry Rozier. We haven't talked about
yeah,
that. They got him.
yeah.
They signed DeLon Wright, Patty Mills. You know, so
Let me
yeah,
ask you that. This
I
is
like the
off the
rookie they got.
top. Off the top, who do you feel was the best trade acquisition at the deadline? Like just off the top of your head, who comes to mind first?
Off the top, to be honest, I may have to go. I'm gonna go with the Mavericks. Like I love them getting
Yeah,
PJ Washington and
good
Gafford,
fit.
bro. Yeah, they fit them so well. Plus what they already had, and they basically gave up nothing to get them. You know,
Yeah,
with all due respect, Grant Williams, but hey,
they didn't like him anyways. So
yeah. From my understanding, they didn't like him anyway. So yeah, and even with the Sixers too, like they in the 7th seed, right?
yeah,
So, I
or
mean
the
8th
eighth
seed,
seed.
they're
They're
in
the
the eighth
eighth seed
seed.
right
So
now.
like it's a lot of what is like Joel Embiid come back. Like, I obviously
Yeah.
don't think he's going to be 100%, but if he can still give you like 25 points,
Yeah.
12 rebounds a game, what Tyrese Maxey going to give you, it's kind of hard to say what Tobias going to give you, but if
It's
Tyrese
just
Maxey
rough.
can come along, you
The
know,
rough thing about the Sixers, and maybe this is where we can move the conversation. We could talk about our teams now, the Warriors and the Sixers here, respectfully. I think when it comes to the Sixers right now, it's because they've fallen so far without Embiid right now. That's what worries me. Like, you get Embiid back, I do believe the Sixers can beat anybody that they play with Embiid. I do like the Buddy Hield acquisition. Even the campaign acquisition was great for the team. I do believe
yeah,
that. But the kicker is that you most likely are going to play Boston in the first round if you can make it out of the play-in tournament. And that's the problem. Like, give me Boston in the second round, maybe. If Embiid could get like a warm-up series, maybe. Like, I'm not saying that they will in the second round or even the third round. But if you give me an Embiid warm-up series in the first round versus like even Cleveland, like
yeah, I was
Cleveland,
saying
if
the
you could
Cavs,
just play
maybe
the
the Knicks,
third seed.
maybe,
The Knicks would be a tough first round series. I'm not going to lie to you. The
it
Knicks,
would.
there's just something about their physicality. The three guys they got from Villanova, the Dante DiVincenzo,
Josh
Brunson,
Hart,
that worries me coming back to Philly. It seems like they just always have like an extra notch. They turn it up on the Sixers for some reason.
right?
So yeah, that worries me with the Knicks, but it's really just playing the Boston Celtics in the first round potentially, right? Like they could get the 7 seed and maybe play the Bucks, and I would like. I'm not saying they would beat the Bucks by any means. I would 10 times much rather play the Bucks than the Celtics first round.
That's
Doc
fair enough.
Rivers, right? Like
Yeah,
Giannis, and that's what worries me with the Sixers,
that's
though.
fair.
Where they're at right now. Do I think they're going to drop further? I mean, the Bulls are like 4.5 games behind them right now, or 4 games back. Don't think the Bulls are going to catch them. I do think the Sixers would beat the Bulls or the Hawks in a play-in game. But would they beat the Heat in a play-in game to get that 7 seed? That's the hard one for me to
Yeah,
believe. Which makes me think they will ultimately be playing the Celtics first round, which
easier said than done. That's a tough task ahead, man.
I do want to see Buddy Hield with Embiid, though. I want to see what that looks like. I'm curious as to what
yeah,
that pairing looks like of just having that type of floor spacer with Tyrese Maxey, with Joel Embiid on
right.
the court. But it is hard to imagine.
So,
What are you?
speaking of your Sixers, though, like
Yeah,
what
I
do you
wanted to
think of
go ahead.
like Kyle Lowry? I see y'all got him as well. Like, what are your thoughts on him? How has he been, for your team so far?
Funny you mention him because he is the one guy I forgot to add in when I talked about the acquisitions they made around the deadline. But Kyle Lowry, man, in the buyout market, I think you could argue that he's been more beneficial than even a Buddy Hield acquisition, who I love that trade at the time. But Kyle Lowry brings this leadership and this like hard-working perspective. Like, he's done it before, he's won a championship before. And I think him along with Nick Nurse, like that pairing has come in, and I think he's been really good for the Philadelphia 76ers. And it's hard to imagine where they would be right now if they didn't have Kyle Lowry. Like, they're not playing great anyways. I think they're like 3-7 or something in their last 10. Let me see here.
Yeah,
Yeah, 3-7 in their last 10. They've lost 2 in a row on the road in the West. So it's not to say that they're in this like bright spot with Kyle Lowry, but I think they would maybe be out of the playoff picture if they don't acquire Kyle Lowry in that buyout market. And the
yeah,
thing is, with Kyle Lowry, with Campaign, with Buddy Hield, it's the same thing for everybody else on the roster, of course, and probably anybody else in the rest of the NBA. When Embiid steps on the court, that's when you're going to be able to see the true impact of
right.
like a Kyle Lowry,
Buddy
a Buddy
Hield,
Hield. Like,
yeah,
imagine Kyle Lowry leading a defensive unit, but with Embiid behind him instead of Mo Bamba or Paul Reed, right? Like,
right,
able to
right.
get rebound. So that's what I'm kind of looking at. Like, everything gets kind of lessened, or it looks smaller in the microscope when Embiid's off the court because he's just that important to this Sixers roster.
Yeah, for sure.
But overall, I think the additions were great, and I would say Kyle Lowry was the best addition as much as I like Buddy Hield.
Yeah. So one last thing about that. So
Yeah,
we haven't really. It's been a while, but
been a while, man.
when y'all traded Pat Bev to the Bucks, I was
How did
like,
you feel
okay,
about
so
that?
I'm assuming that it would have to be like something else in the works, right? Because
Yeah,
y'all wouldn't just trade him, for campaign, which campaign has been pretty good for y'all. I get it
he
to him,
has. He's been
but
better for us than he was for the Bucks.
you exactly. So
Yeah,
I was like, okay, if they trading Pat Bev and Jaden Springer for a pick, correct?
right.
So there has to be
Where's the
something
defense?
else in the works. I would assume that's what
Yeah,
Daryl Morey is doing here. I don't think he'll just trade Jaden Springer away for nothing. So, because I know that he traded Lyra to Hornets for Terry
the
Rozier.
Hornets. Yeah,
Obviously, I don't think he was going to be there long, in which
yeah,
they ended up buying him out, and he ended up playing for his hometown team in the Sixers. So,
yeah,
yeah, I kind of figured that there was something else in the works for y'all to get a guy like Kyle
yeah.
Lowry. But
We needed
yeah,
him. Yeah,
yeah,
we needed him.
but for Pat Bev though, going to the Bucks, I was like, it was interesting. I mean, I never
I
thought
think
I'd
he's
see him
been
and he's
a
been
good
good. I
piece
never
for
thought
them
I'd see
too.
him and Dame play together though. But it's just like with him and Westbrook. You just never know. Like, what
It
is this
is
world
interesting,
coming to,
isn't it?
bro? Yeah, we got Chris Paul and the Warriors for crying out loud.
It
Yeah,
is. It's so interesting where like if you told me 5 years previous that this is where the league would be right now, I would have looked at you like you had two heads, right?
yeah,
Like
like this.
it is
Who can
crazy
believe
to think of
this?
where we're at.
Yeah, but yeah, Pat Bev been pretty good for the Bucks. I just didn't like this comment he made about the Sixers. Like he was kind of dissing them. I forgot what he said though. I was like,
He
really, bro?
basically said like he said something about the Bucks, kind of like they're focused on winning a
I'm winning,
championship.
yeah, winning. And I'm like, bro, what is like? I'm sure the Sixers, they care to win too. So what are you trying to say? Like, don't
And
get
you
mad at your teammates, bro.
And the big thing for me with that comment specifically was like when he was in Philly, there was nothing wrong. You know what I mean? Like he
The fans
wasn't
love him.
complaining about anything while he was in Philly. He was actually like sizing Philly up. He was sizing the Sixers up, his relationship with Morey, all of that, right?
Yep.
Relationship with Nurse. And like as soon as you leave now, there's like this subliminal diss, right? Like to the Sixers. I agree. That was weird.
Because I
Um,
seen Mo Bamba actually tweeted him the other day or something. I seen him.
Yo, so it's a whole other conversation, but basically on Pat Bev's pod, this is maybe a conversation we can have another day because I feel like it is a wild topic. But basically Pat Bev went on there and said that Mo Bamba is like a top five white speaker, white black speaker, white African American speaker. So basically what he's saying is that Mo Bamba speaks proper.
Yeah.
And he was saying that Mo Bamba is a top five white
Yeah, I
speaker.
get what you're saying.
I don't. I'm treading lightly. I don't want to like say anything too crazy here, but
Right.
that was the epitome of what Pat Bev was saying about Mo Bamba. And Mo Bamba basically came back and is like, "Well, if you're saying that I'm a white black guy, basically."
Right.
Then you're basically undermining all black people that want to be educated, want to present themselves as professional. And you're kind of saying that that's being white, right? Like, so that's kind of like undermining the African Americans in general, right? And I
Right.
think that's what Mo Bamba was kind of getting at there. It's like, if you're just saying this because I do speak properly, what are you actually saying about African Americans? And I think that was the big message there. And it was interesting. I never expected to hear something like that from Pat Bev. And, with all due respect, he's sitting there with like his white co-host
Yeah.
talking about this. It was a little weird for me,
Yeah,
man.
it's definitely kind of wild, bro. I
That
mean,
was a little weird
I
for
didn't
me
know
to
what
hear from
really
him.
when I seen the tweet, I didn't know the context behind it, so that's why I
Yeah.
had to ask you. So
That's why Mo Bamba was tagging that Dr. Umar in those posts because he's a leader within African American culture and education and
yeah,
just not spreading ignorance in America, which I felt like that's the best word for what Pat Bev was saying on his pod. It was ignorant, and
yeah, I can see that.
yeah, Mo Bamba was responding to that. To your point, just to bring it back to your point about Kyle Lowry, we can move to the Warriors because I do want to talk with you about them. The point with Kyle Lowry, though, he's been so good for us that I would literally bring him back next year. I would try to make sure that he's back on the roster next season.
Yeah,
And mind you, I thought he was washed. Like I thought he was cooked when he was
that's
playing on
kind
the
of
Heat.
fair enough. Yeah,
Like he
that's
still
fair.
did little things for the Heat, but he wasn't
Yeah,
like Toronto Kyle. But he's done a
yeah,
lot more for the Sixers than he did for the Heat, in my opinion. So I've really liked that addition. But I want to switch lanes. I want to go to your Warriors over in that Western Conference because the Warriors, man, they're starting to play some better ball. They're starting to pick up some confidence. They're starting to play better as a unit, more as a team, right? But you're in the Western Conference, and it's fucking hard out there, yo. Like, I can't imagine being in the Western Conference, bro. Like,
it's rough, bro. Like,
where are you at with the Warriors right now? Talk to me. Like, what are your thoughts on them in the Western Conference?
Where am I at with the Golden State Warriors? To be honest, I'm in a good space right now. You know, I can't complain. As you mentioned, we've been playing way better as a late. So as a fan, it's always nice to see. I mean, obviously, this isn't the. I feel like one thing about the Warriors fan base. Excuse for my language, but we too fucking spoiled, bro. We take most of those guys take
I
4 championship in 8 years for fucking grand. That shit is not easy, bro. Getting to the finals alone is not an easy task. And obviously, winning the championship isn't easy. So,
Yeah,
you got to be more grateful, and whatnot.
I
Like,
agree.
obviously, this isn't the same team as it was back in the day. Like, this isn't the 15, 16 Warriors where we can beat everybody. Like, things have changed. These guys are
Yeah,
getting older, and guess what? That's okay. That's life. You get older, but I mean, I can't complain with the Warriors. We've just been winning games and we have been losing, but hey, it's okay. I mean, I come to a realization that we're just a playing team. Like, I don't think
yeah,
that we're going to make the playoffs or anything, but yeah, I mean, this team to dive deep into it, like the roster is just constructed terribly, bro. Like
yeah.
Draymond Green starting at center for us is just
Doesn't balance. It doesn't balance
it
itself, man.
just doesn't work. Like obviously Draymond, he can play the five, but he is like more so of a closing the game type of thing, not like
Yeah,
starting off playing the five. Like Draymond has been dealing with
yeah.
back issues for the past, I don't know, 3, 4 plus years now.
It's
And
more like
he's
a
getting older,
matchup
bro.
thing.
Like like he's getting older as well. So, it's kind of tough, but with the rise of Jonathan Kaminga, he has to play the five because I mean you're not going to bench Kaminga. He's been playing great as of
Yeah,
late, so you're not
yeah,
going to bench him. So you
yeah.
have no choice but to move Draymond to the five. Yeah, Wiggs at the three. We got the Ricky Pods and we got Steph starting. So yeah, this roster just constructed, not well. But
So
as the
weird.
bench, we got Chris Paul. You say you'd like to bring Kyle Lowry back. I actually like to bring Chris Paul back. He's
Yeah,
been good for us all season. I mean, I got to
leadership.
give him his props. Leadership, just being that point guard, and yeah. But this team has a lot to figure out in the off season. Just it's a
You're
lot
right.
to.
You need a true center. That's what it
Yeah,
comes down to. I
we
think
do.
Kevin Looney, he was great last year, right? Like he
Yeah, he
really
was great
stepped up to
last
the
year.
plate. It's just that you just can't ask Kevin Looney to like be that guy like every postseason. You know what I mean? Like relying on Kevin Looney. He's a good role player, right? And he was great
Yes,
last year.
star hero.
You need a real center. You need just like a defensive minded center that's going to
Yes,
rebound and defend. It's just like Draymond, but just add like 5 inches, right? Like
yes,
that's
like
what you need.
Daniel Gafford was the guy I wanted so bad. I was
That's a
like,
good one. That is a good mention.
whatever you need to get a Wizards, just get them picks, whatever, make it happen. But we
Yeah,
just ended up trading Corey Joseph for a draft pick, which I'm actually, I can't complain. It didn't need it because going into the
yeah,
draft, we didn't have a pick at all. So hey, at least we left with something, although we didn't make any moves outside of that. But
yeah.
yeah, like you got to reevaluate this team because Draymond can't be your 4 time center moving forward. They're just not going to work, bro.
Exactly.
Like teams are too big. Like look at the likes of the Timberwolves, right?
Yeah,
Cat, Rudy Gobert,
the perfect
even the
example.
Lakers, Bron, AD,
The
who
Nuggets.
else? The Nuggets, Aaron Gordon, Jokic.
Yeah.
It's a big team, bro. You got to match your team
And then
energy.
what? Who did the Thunder add? Did they add a big man?
Bismack Biyombo.
Bismack Biyombo. Okay, so the
Yeah,
veteran, which is good for them. They need older guys on their
yeah.
roster, and
You
they
need
added
guys like
Gordon
him and
Hayward
Gordon Hayward. Yep.
too.
And I think they re-signed Mike Muscala to a 10-day as well. So
Yeah, I did see
yeah,
that the the
yeah,
the, the classic Thunder.
yeah.
um, so with the Warriors at the bottom here, right in the play-in tournament. So the way refresh me if you know, would it be that the Warriors right now the way it's lined up, they would play LA first? Is that how it works? Like the 9 and the
I
10
be-
play?
yeah, I think that's how it goes. Like I know if I
Is
think
it the 9 and the 10 play, or is it that the 7 and the 10 play and the 8 and 9 play first? Like
I don't
Can't
know because I
remember.
know whoever lose, I think don't another team get an opportunity to play to redeem themselves or something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, okay, yeah, you're right. You're right. So you're spot on. So it is that the 7 and the 8 play.
Okay, whoever
The
lose
7 and the
play
8 play.
the
Whoever
winner.
loses plays for the 8.
Okay, yeah, okay,
Plays the
yeah,
winner of 9 and 10 for the 8. The 7's locked in at 7.
yeah.
And then 8, the winner of 9 and 10 will play the loser of 7 and 8. Is
Okay,
I believe that's how it works. I believe that's
yeah.
how it went
That
last
sounds
year.
about right.
Yeah. So right now you would play the Lakers. How do you feel about that? Like, do you feel like it's possible to get out of the play-in and make the postseason?
To be honest, I have all the faith in the world we can beat the Lakers, but it's really just one guy to me, and that's Anthony Davis. Like
Anthony Davis. But can
he's the
Draymond
difference
give you
maker.
just one like spectacular defensive performance, like all out effort against AD? Like, can he give you just one game of that? Because that's all it is. It's not a 7-game
Okay.
series.
Well, then if Draymond can do that, then heck yeah, we can beat the Lakers for sure.
It's a big
But
ass.
yeah, it's a big ass because like with AD, like he just disrupts so much of our offense. Because here's the thing, like Draymond, he's shooting like 44% from 3-point range or like 2 attempts a game, which is
Yeah,
pretty good. I can't complain at that.
for
But
Draymond,
teams still
especially.
going to dare him to make those threes consistently. So in saying that,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Anthony Davis just going to free roam around the paint. Like he's going to change all our shots that come to the rim. You know,
yeah.
he's so versatile. He can switch on the guards and wings on the perimeter. So yeah, but it'll definitely be a tough game for sure. I mean, I hope we win because we owe those guys a few years. They put us at the play in, so LeBron hit that crazy 3-pointer. But yeah, I can see us beating the Lakers. You know, for sure. We just gotta put the right lineup out there and match those guys' intensity.
That's the thing in the Western Conference too. Like I mentioned it earlier, kind of with the Eastern. But when you go down the West, right? You go down this list of teams in the West, all the way down to the play-in tournament, right? So GSW versus LA Lakers. Could Steph give you a 50-point game in the play-in game? Right? Like
Ooh.
it could happen. Like it could. Like I'm not saying that he will. I'm not saying that that's what's needed for the Warriors to win. But the same thing can be said for AD. Like maybe AD gives the Lakers 40 and that gets them through that one game. Each of the teams here at the bottom of the West have a player that can do that. And that's kind of what I'm getting at there. Like you go up, it's the Dallas Mavericks and Luka and Kyrie. It's the Sacramento Kings with De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis. It's the Phoenix Suns with KD, Beal, and Devin Booker. It's the New Orleans Pelicans with Zion and Bi. So on and so forth. Right? We can keep naming names, but like each team has a player that can go nuclear in any given game and get you a win. So it's really hard to predict like a play-in series in that case. Like maybe it's just Steph's night that night. Maybe Clay comes off the bench and hits 9 threes in this playing game against the Lakers. Like
Yeah,
you
that'll be
just really
interesting.
don't know. You
Yeah.
really don't, man. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, compared to the last playing game we was in, we got a lot of more experience now. We got Chris Paul and Clay, so
Yeah.
yeah.
I will say this just between the team, and I was wrong earlier at the beginning of the show because I said you brought up the Magic. You brought up the Pelicans to me, right?
Yeah, I brought up the
It was
Pelicans.
and then I brought the Magic back to you. So I was giving you what I brought up. Nonetheless, you brought up the Pelicans, and I did want to kind of hone in on that point. I think the Pelicans, by all means, are much bigger contenders overall than like an Orlando Magic team in the Eastern Conference. Like I do think the Pelicans at that 5 seed, wherever they end up landing to end the season here, um, I think they can beat anybody. It's the same thing as the Clippers. It's that health factor, man. Like it's that
Yeah,
health factor. Like
yeah,
if
it
they're
is
healty, they
because
can beat anyone.
right. So
Because they
has
have like
Zion?
perfect complementary players like Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Valanciunas. Like they have
Yeah,
perfect
Boston's
role
able to play
players around their
games.
stars.
Yeah. So has Zion played a playoff game yet in his career?
That's a good question. Let me look it up right now. Should be easy to find. Why do I feel like he hasn't?
That's how I'm feeling right now because I think they may have played in the play-in. Well, actually, I know
Nah,
they
he
played
hasn't
this.
played in the postseason. There's
Yeah, because I
no
know
numbers for
in
him here.
22. they played the Suns, and he didn't play in this series. But the
Yeah,
Pelicans, they didn't make the playoff. But to your point, yeah, this Pelicans team, like I like the rookie. They got Jordan Hawkins. I mean, he's nice.
yeah.
They got depth. Marshall. They got Zeller. They got Murphy.
They have
They like
dogs.
the start lineup fits each other pretty well. You got CJ McCollum. He's a vet. A
Yeah,
playmaker who can go out there and get you a bucket. You got an elite point of attack defender in Herb Jones. He's been more aggressive offensively. You got Bi and Zion and Valanciunas. Although got a couple in each other so well. But speaking of Bi, I hope his injury isn't nothing serious because I
that's a
seen
big
him.
part right there.
I
Yeah,
seen he was grabbing his knee a few nights ago. So hope all is well with him. For sure, because I like to see the Pelicans. They seem like to be a fun team, like to get matched up against in the playoff series, or just
yeah.
to watch from a fan perspective.
Because like right now they would play the Clippers in the
Yeah, that
playoffs.
would be an interesting.
That would be a great series. It
Yeah,
says here that Brandon Ingram suffered a bone contusion in his left knee Thursday and is expected to miss at least 2 weeks. So
basically the
hopefully
end of the
not too
season
serious.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
basically the end of the season now. But I will say this: like maybe Zion can like kill that narrative. Maybe he's a guy who's we talked about Paulo Banchero earlier. Like maybe
Yeah.
Zion a guy like once he get in the playoffs for the first time,
Turns it
he
up.
he turns it up.
Yeah.
Just kicks it
Because
up a notch. So.
that is one thing, man. When I watched Zion at Duke, right? Like that's where I got to see him play like postseason basketball, like in the tournament, right? And I mean, I know they lost I believe it was the Elite Eight against Michigan State, but I mean, Zion went nuclear in that tournament against guys like Taco Fall, like seven. Like, so he
Yeah.
does have a switch in big games that he can turn up and give you like a 35-point outing, right? Like, he does have that switch he can hit. But man, I feel like we covered a lot in this show, bro.
Yeah, we talked
We
about a lot
could
of
we
shit.
could go a lot further, I feel, but I think this is a good stopping point. I feel like this is a good point to kind of plug next week. We will be right back with another episode right here, mashing it up between Scotty Talks NBA and To the Galaxy Pod with my man Slim. It was fun today, man. It was good to get back in here with you.
Yeah,
And we're gonna have plenty more to talk about. Like I said, we could go probably another hour today just catching up on what's
yeah.
transpired. But did you have anything else you wanted to put out there? Anything else you wanted to get off your chest before we get out of here, my man?
To be honest, that's pretty much it. I mean, hopefully, both our teams make the play in and potentially make the
Make it
playoffs, and we'll
fun.
see how that goes. So
Yeah, make
yeah,
it
bro.
fun for us.
Yeah, make it fun for us to cover. Both teams give our thoughts and perspective
Yeah,
on
like we
it.
can see like which team will make it further if they both make the playoffs or something. Maybe we
Yeah,
could put like a
exactly. Some
wager or
fun like
something.
that, but yeah,
Yeah.
not too much.
No.
But for those watching from the Galaxy Pod, make sure to hit my guy Scotty with a subscription. Make sure you comment on the video, let them know that I sent you as well. Let's go follow the guy on Twitter because why not? Just help us grow
Appreciate
this
that.
grow this YouTube channel and just keep going, bro.
Yeah, exactly. That's the goal, man. Just keep linking with more and more content creators, more and more NBA fans out there. And that's what it's about. It's about these discussions that we're having. And then we want other people to comment, chime in on it as well. We want to have the discussion with everybody out there. So just help us grow the channel here and get more viewers, more interactions, and it's going to be more fun for everyone. But
Right.
time will tell. Slow and steady wins the race. We will be back next Monday. I think this is a good time for us, right? Mondays, we can record Sundays, go publish it on Mondays, whatever the case may be. But we will be back next Monday with another episode of we got to find a name for the show. Slim. Like we can't keep saying Scotty Talks NBA and To the Galaxy Pod.
We'll find a name, bro.
But for now, subscribe to Scotty Talks NBA channel. Subscribe to the Galaxy Pod channel with my man Slim. And be sure to give him a follow at RTR30111 on Twitter. Myself at Scottydrowned. That's going to be it for this episode. Peace, everyone.